Okay, everybody, welcome officially to Moving Swiftly into 2024, lessons that all women can learn from Taylor Swift. I am so excited to be here with you. If you can't tell, my shirt says, "You need to calm down." So I love that quote, but in general, I do actually want to spend the next hour being hyped up. I would love if you all would throw in the chat, where are you joining us from today? And what is your favorite Taylor Swift song? Where are you joining us from today? And what is your favorite Taylor Swift song? I know this is a very challenging question to answer. If you need to say an album, if you need to say an era, we're not going to be super strict about this. While I wait for all of your answers to come in, and I love the way that the chat is literally on fire, I will take a second to introduce myself. My name is Randi Braun. I'm joining from Washington, D.C., and hands down, my most favorite Taylor Swift song of all time is Style. Particularly love the re-record. But I have to say right now, The Man has been my pump-up song lately for 2024. So in addition to being a lover of style, I am, for those of you who don't know me, I'm an author, I'm an executive coach, and the founder of the women's leadership firm, Something Major, and I'm an executive coach. I'm also proud to be one of the few women to have ever written a business book by a woman for women to be on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. And most importantly, I'm super excited to spend this time with you. I'm sure there are some women on the chat who are bigger Swifties than I am. You might be more well-versed in her history. You might be more versed in her canon. The goal of today's workshop, Moving Swiftly into 2024, is to really pay homage to some of the things that I am just obsessed with about Taylor Swift as a leader, a businesswoman, and a creative, and talk about how we can apply those things to our own life. So before we jump into where we're going today, I just want to visit the chat. We have people literally, it seems like, from coast to coast, from Florida, from Wisconsin, from Indianapolis, from Atlanta. We got Shake It Off, Love Story. We have Laura from Frederick, who loves All Too Well. We have folks from Sacramento, Virginia, Memphis. Oh my gosh, Alyssa's joining us all the way from Egypt. Shout out, Alyssa. Thank you for joining us this evening. I believe it's the evening your time. Orlando, Phoenix, Philly, California. And I love that everybody's favorite songs range the entire canon. In terms of where we're going today, I love this quote from Mastermind, the song Mastermind. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so I want to walk you through a little game plan of where we're going today, what our agenda looks like together. I also love that the chat is on fire, and I want you to keep engaging with me throughout the chat. I feel like we need to crowdsource everybody's favorite songs from this chat after and just have like a follow-up gift party. So in terms of where we're going today, we're going to talk about 5 different leadership lessons that every woman can learn from Taylor Swift. And by the way, just throw me a note in the chat. Just give me a +1 if you can see my screen. Just give me a +1. I want to make sure here everyone can see my screen. Okay, wonderful. So that's the first place we're going. The second thing is that for each one of those 5 leadership lessons, we're going to go through what I think of as like the iconic moment demonstrating those lessons in action. I am in no way, shape, or form the ultimate authority on Taylor Swift. If you think there's another iconic moment that demonstrates what I'm talking about, throw it in the chat. And then the last thing that we're going to do for each one of these lessons is, as an executive coach, I'm going to walk you through what I think of as the practical tools that we can all use to translate these lessons back into our non-celebrity work lives. So like you and I are probably not going to go on an Eras tour, right? But I want us to leave this webinar today feeling equipped to move swiftly into 2024, to really take the things that so many of us admire about Taylor Swift into the year with us. And with that, I'd love to hear from you in the chat. What's one thing you admire about Taylor Swift? Today, I'm going to talk to you about 5 things that I admire about Taylor Swift, but I'd love to hear from you. What are that you most admire? I heard that some of you admire her music. I heard Jen was like, I don't even have a favorite song. I just the whole Love Her album. Kristen says she admires her authenticity. She seems true to herself. She sued that DJ for sexual harassment. Suzanne, I'm so glad that she did that. I think it's one of the most important parts of the Miss Americana documentary. Her strength, just being a mastermind in business, not into the drama, her ability to bounce back. And so I think that what the chat is demonstrating to us, and the fact that everybody has a different favorite Taylor Swift song, shows us something really important about what we've all come together here to discuss and share, which is that we have one person, Taylor Swift. Her impact on us is varied. Maybe you don't even like her music. You're just here because you're like, this woman's famous. I don't know much about her, but apparently she's very successful. But as we go through the next hour together, I really want to underscore just one thing before we jump in, and that this content is not a prescription for you to play by a certain set of rules. If you're familiar with my work, if you're familiar with my book, my ethos and everything that I talk about in the new playbook is about writing your own rules for success. So there's a reason today that we're going to look at 5 leadership lessons. There's a reason today that we're going to look at multiple tools you can use inside each one of those lessons. It's because every single woman on this webinar today or watching the recording has a different set of goals, a different set of priorities, a different lived experience, and a different origin story. My goal is that every single one of you take 1 to 2 things away from this webinar that you are going to feel really inspired to activate on. So if that's something that you can get behind, again, throw me a +1 in the chat. I'm so excited to jump in. And with that, we're going to start with her first lesson. So for me, lesson 1 from Taylor Swift as we move swiftly into 2024 is that we have to pursue our dreams relentlessly. To me, that is one of the #1 lessons that Taylor Swift has taught us. And when I think about the iconic moment that demonstrates that, I came up with literally everything about the last 17 years. Literally every single thing about the last 17 years being this kind of cumulative iconic moment that we're all living in right now. You know, I think we can all agree that what Taylor Swift has built over time. And I know that her music's kind of sexier than a 401k, but they're kind of the same in that they're the principle of compounding interest, right? When we invest in something, when we pursue relentlessly, we are really able to achieve our goals and really play that long game. So that's my iconic moment from her, just the last 17 years around pursuing your dream relentlessly. If you're a Swiftie and you feel like there's a song that really speaks to you about this theme, if you're a Swiftie and you feel like there's a moment that really speaks to you about that, please feel free to put it in the chat. Like I said, we're going to have a takeaway project of a follow-up playlist from here. And so when we think about that first lesson of pursuing our dreams relentlessly, here are some of the tools that I think of as a coach that, again, we can apply to our non-celebrity, non-singer lives. So the first one is that we absolutely, positively have to name our goals. And I know that this sounds really simple, but one of the things I see constantly as a coach is that people know that they want a change. People know that they want something different. People know that they want something better, but they don't know how to name it. It is impossible to reach your goals if you do not name them. And so I want you to name them in a crystal clear manner. They can be as big as, I want to land my dream job this year. They can be as big in your personal life as, I want to find a partner, or I want to start a family, or I want to feel more in balance caring for an elderly family member. They can be as small as, I want to sleep more, I want to get outside more, I want to be off Instagram. So I'd love to hear from you. What's one of your goals for 2024? The research shows that just by putting it in the chat, you will be more likely to achieve that goal. What is a goal that you have for 2024? Because lesson #1, if we're going to be like Taylor, we have got to pursue our dreams relentlessly. And step 1 in doing that is naming our goals. So I just want to read some of these because they're so inspiring as they're coming in. I want to eat healthier. I want to have more family dinners. I want to start a family. IVF begins this year. Good luck to you. I want to start running again. I want to launch an online course. I want to exercise more. I want to complete my first Ironman. I want to take more chances, spend more time with friendships, exercise regularly. I'm going to read a few more. Adopt a healthier lifestyle, move more each day, develop another income stream, save better from retirement, make more time to make more content, make time to plan for the future, putting fitness before my clients, being present in the moment I'm in. These are such an inspiring collection of goals, and we have dozens and dozens and dozens of more. Whether I shouted your goal out or not, the fact that you have put it in the chat and named it in a specific manner has already made that goal more achievable than it was 30 seconds ago. So if step one to living like Taylor and pursuing our dreams relentlessly is naming our goals, the second is that we must focus on small yes and no commitments. So I want to tell you a story about a client of mine. Again, I tell this story if you've read my book in my chapters about achieving your goals. In the middle of the pandemic, or I should say in the early days of the pandemic, I was running a group coaching program, something that I do very regularly. And we got to the module on goals. There was a woman in the cohort who was probably the busiest person I knew in June 2020. She had devoted her entire career to social justice. She had 3 kids in 3 different teleschools. And if you can recall, in those weeks after the murder of George Floyd, there was just this explosion of attention and momentum around the work that she had been doing for years and years and years. She was truly the most stretched thin person I knew. And so we were having a conversation that day around goals, right? And about this idea of focusing on her small yes and no commitments. And I had asked her, hey, like, name a goal, be specific. If I could give you more time in your day, what is something that you would do? And she said, you know what? I've always been a runner. It kind of fell off before the pandemic. I know it would give me so much sanity right now, but I just don't feel like I have the time right now and the bandwidth to do it. So I asked her, if we focus on those small yes and no commitments, what is the smallest thing you could say yes to support that goal? And she said, you know what? I feel like I could set my alarm just 15 minutes earlier tomorrow. Like, if I give myself 5 minutes to brush my teeth and get dressed, that gives me 10 minutes, like 3 songs to run around the block and take a jog. I said, okay, great. Super concrete, small, specific yes. I said, what is it that you're going to say no to protect that yes? She said, I realize that I need to say no to is I need to say no to hitting the snooze. Okay, so she made a small yes commitment and a small no commitment, right? Yes to waking up early and no to hitting the snooze. I want to hear from you before I tell you more about the tools in this story to throw in the chat. What is one yes commitment you are making to the goal that you just put in the chat? So if you want to live healthier, what's the thing you're saying yes to that's a small commitment? I'm not asking you to sign up for a 12-month training regimen. I'm asking you, like, what's your healthy choice tomorrow? If your goal is to be more present, what is your yes commitment? Are you saying yes to putting your cell phone away? What are these small yes commitments that you're making? Including the kids and dinner plans, scheduling my Pilates classes in advance, moving my body every single day, attending at least half the sessions, setting up a Libby account. I love that. That's the digital library app for those of you who don't know it. And so, okay, she made her yes commitment, she made her no commitment. The next tool I want to give you for pursuing your goals relentlessly, and I think this is something that Taylor models beautifully in making her goals a team sport. We're going to talk more about the lessons we can learn about her and relationships in a little bit, is that I'm a huge believer, you have got to make your goals a contact sport. And so I don't mean like, yes, literally we're going to tackle our goals. We don't need to tackle other people. So I had asked her, I said, okay, make this goal a contact sport. How is someone else going to help you stay accountable? Because we've got to put our goals in contact with other people. She said, I'm going to tell my partner that when the alarm goes off, if I'm tempted to snooze, I want him to push me out of the bed. So I want to ask you, that was her contact sport. You just told me the things that you're going to say yes to. Who is the person now that is going to hold you accountable to those yes commitments? You are not enough. Not like you're not good enough, but just like accountability works. So who is the person? Is it if you wanted to have more time with your family? Is it one of your kids or your partner? If you want to do something at work, is it a work wife or a mentor? Who is the person in your life who you're going to deputize in making your goal a contact sport? Who are you going to trust? I'm hearing my bestie, my hubby, my reading challenge partner, my financial planner. Lots of partners in here, lots of friends in here. We're going to talk more about relationships in a little while. And just to let you know where this story ends, she went She had her run, her partner pushed her out of bed, she didn't hit the snooze. We came back to the coaching session. Our cohorts meet semi-weekly, and we all celebrated that she ran. We had our coaching capstone. This goal actually didn't really come up again compared to some of the other things we were working on. Well, those of you who have ever worked with me know that at the end of every year, I send these beautiful champagne bottles out to all of my clients with the word something major embossed into them. And I say with everyone in the note, hey, put this in your fridge, and when something major happens to you this year, I want you to pop the champagne, take a picture of what it was so I can celebrate it with you. So the champagne bottles go, and sometime into the new year, I receive a note from her letting me know that that one run, that one day, turned into a second run, turned into a third run, turned into a fourth run. And in the middle of deep COVID, she remotely ran her very first marathon. If that is not pursuing your dreams relentlessly, I don't know what is. And I think this is something that Taylor models perfectly. The last tool I want to share with you here in lesson 1 from Taylor, Pursuing Your Dreams Relentlessly, is remember, it's not enough to name your goals. It's not enough, as Taylor models beautifully, to say yes and no to things on a daily basis. It's not enough to make your goals a contact sport. You must remember they are a literal marathon. This is a real person. She lives in Buffalo, New York. And I really hope as you think about modeling this leadership tool from Taylor of pursuing your dreams relentlessly, you will remember that your goals are a literal marathon. I hear goals in here about reading more, about starting a family, about saving for retirement. It is really hard when the wins don't feel immediate. I encourage you to make like Taylor. Remember that iconic moment has been the whole last 17 years. Let your small actions compound like interest. Any questions about this? Lesson number 1 from Taylor, Pursuing Our Dreams Relentlessly, and how we can take this into our work life? Questions? Give me a +1 if you're ready to move on to tool number 2. And we have Q&A open, so if you have a question at any point, phenomenal. I love this. And thank you for throwing all of your accountability in here of what you're going to do. Okay, lesson number 2. Do not let the jerks get you down. I know what I feel like my Taylor iconic moment is. What's your Taylor Swift iconic moment on this? Not letting the jerks get us down. I know what I picked as my iconic Taylor Swift moment for this. But I'm curious if anyone else has like an iconic Taylor Swift moment. Because this, for me, was the moment I fell in love with Taylor Swift. I feel like I fell in love with her as a person more before the music. Okay, so winner, winner, chicken dinner, like Suzanne, like Brandy, like Wa, I hope I'm saying your name right, like Kristen. My iconic moment is the Kanye saga, right? And we're going to get, for everyone who said the Taylor's version re-records, we are so going to get there in a second. To me, they're like their own iconic moment. For those of you who maybe don't remember, or who only vaguely know the story, it was 2009. Side bangs were in. We had a President Barack Obama. This was a time long, long ago. And also in 2009, if you recall, we had the iconic moment of Taylor Swift accepting her MTV Video Music Award for You Belong With Me, when Kanye rushed the stage, took the mic out of her hand, and infamously told her, I would let you finish, but actually Beyonce has the best album of all time. I literally cannot even imagine what it would be like for somebody to do that to me. And when I think about and Wa says she was a child practically. She was a child, and this was an adult. I think as President Obama said at the time, like he was being a jerk or a jackass. Like this was like literally like the President of the United States of America weighed in on it. And when I think about what makes this an iconic moment, it's actually not about Kanye. It is so about Taylor, right? It is about like the shake it off. It is about like not letting the jerks get her down, and about turning the drama, turning what for her felt like a trauma into musical revenge, turning into musical retribution. And many of you know, like the saga only continued between Kim and Kanye, right? When there was this lyric around, Taylor Swift basically being a bitch in a Kanye song, insinuating some sexually explicit content about her, and Kim Kardashian releasing some doctored up video saying that Taylor authorized it, which we would learn years and years later was never true. And when Kim Kardashian goes and basically, calls her a snake on social media, we see again this iconic moment of Taylor completely reappropriating the entire snake imagery to be like the thematic basis of her entire reputation for. I see Laura saying this can translate so much into corporate America. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next, because this idea of not letting the jerks get us down, I think one of the reasons this really resonated with me is like, I have a firm belief that almost every single Taylor Swift song about like a jerk or about a bad boyfriend or about someone crossing you could literally be played about work. Like, just think about it for a second. Like, so many of the lyrics she has about a guy who dumped her could literally be about the boss who stole your ideas, who put you down, who promised you a promotion, and then totally jerked you around. Someone in the chat says, like, Bad Blood is literally the anthem of their boss transition. Mean has been an anthem for me for such a long time. And so I just think that for me, we're trying to talk about 5 lessons today, 5 iconic moments. For me, this is one that has gotten me through so many tough moments in my life. I think it's really like why I fell in love with her as a role model. This idea of not letting the jerks get us down. I also see that there are some raised hands. I see there are some raised hands. If you have some questions, please feel free to put them into the chat so that I can take them there. Let's talk about like some of the tools, because I think we can all agree this is so applicable to our work lives and our personal lives that we can take with us. So the first tool, and this is honestly one of the most important things I want to talk about today, is that we must understand that feedback doesn't define you. I'm going to say this one more time. Feedback does not define you. And one of the things that I talk about in my book that I want to highlight here is what I call the 3 essential truths about feedback. So the first thing I want you to understand about feedback is that feedback tells us more about the feedback giver than it does about the feedback receiver. Their preferences, their priorities, their beliefs, their biases, than it does about ourselves. Let's just talk about this in the context of Kanye for a second, right? Kanye grabbing the mic and taking it out of her hand at the 2009 VMAs was not a referendum on Taylor's music. I think we can all agree on that. It was a referendum on his entitlement, his musical taste, his distaste for another artist, his friendship with yet another artist. We can all see this so clearly when it comes to Kanye and Taylor. I encourage you to take a step back and see it clearly about yourself. The second truth is that feedback is, by definition, a subjective assessment. It is not an immutable truth about who you are. I'm going to say this one more time. Feedback is not an immutable truth about who you are. It is a subjective assessment about how somebody sees you in a moment in time in relation to a specific situation. And that's really what the third truth is, right? Feedback is a snapshot. I'm going to say this one more time. Feedback is a snapshot. It is capturing that moment in time, the triangulation between you, your feedback giver, and yourself in a situation. Sometimes we get feedback and people saying nasty things to us. Sometimes we get feedback in silence. Sometimes we get feedback in the way that people react to us with other nonverbal cues. Listen, I think feedback's really good. One of my clients, she has this very funny quote, and Angie says that she loves this part of my book. So Angie, you'll know this from the book. One of my clients always says, like, I don't want to throw the cork out with the wine, right? Feedback always has something that we can learn. However, I think it's so important to remember that feedback is so subjective. And I try to remind all of my clients when they come to me in coaching and like, they're just going through something that crushed them. Like someone said something that really got under their skin. Someone did something to them in a past job and they're carrying it around as this like truth about themselves that they can't shake free from, it's so important to remember that like every single piece of feedback you get is kind of like a data point. And if you could imagine plotting thousands and thousands and thousands of data points onto a graph, every email, every conversation, every formal piece of feedback, I invite you to think about like, where would the feedback trend? Because a lot of times we get obsessed with that outlier, the one negative thing that somebody said to us, the one time that we did a presentation and it wasn't received well, the one time that we put ourselves out there, maybe in a personal situation to someone we really had feelings for, and that wasn't reciprocated to us. And we get obsessed with the outlier. Many of you who are on this call are leaders, are professionals, and I encourage you to think about, what would you do if somebody on your team came to you with thousands of points of data and said, you know what, the trend line goes here, but we're going to make a make or break decision for the company based on the outlier. You would be like, get out of my office. I can't trust your judgment. I want you to remember that that applies to you too. And just one more thing I want to tell you about this is it's worth remembering that for high performers, the impact of negative feedback is stickier in the brain than it is for average performers. So for a high performer, it takes 6 pieces of positive feedback to neutralize negative feedback. For an average performer, it takes only 4. So if you feel like you're hard on yourself and you're a high performer, the science kind of shows us a little bit why that is. So the chat's on fire. I just want to check in here and see what you guys are sharing with us. Once I learned this about feedback, it changed everything for me. This comes full circle with Taylor. Know that those words can have power that you might not intend when you give feedback. People are saying that they love the book. They needed to hear this. This is gospel. So I'm so glad that this is resonating with you. The second thing I want to remind you of, and it's so related here when we talk about not letting the jerks derail our dreams, is do not let toxic people derail your dreams. Just because someone gave you feedback on something that you wanted to do and you didn't like it doesn't mean your dream is bad. I know that this might be a controversial, unpopular piece of advice, but I'm a huge advocate for not quitting your job just because somebody else is a jerk. I always say stay in your job and just see what you can do to put your head down and get through, because someone else's jerk toxic behavior shouldn't compromise your financial stability, shouldn't compromise your dreams. And the last thing that I want to offer you here in terms of not letting the jerks get you down is just a final thought. I really want to encourage you. I think this is something Taylor Swift does beautifully, to obsess over your strengths, not your weaknesses. For years, Taylor Swift and Beyonce have been compared to each other. I think we can all agree, Taylor's not the dancer that Beyonce is. It's no shade at Taylor. It's just that. And instead of working and working and working to become a better dancer, Taylor Swift leaned into her strengths, which is her songwriting, her connection, her authenticity, which isn't to say that Beyonce doesn't have those things, but those are Taylor. And so I want to encourage you to celebrate your strength right now. I'm curious, what is something that you know is a strength of yours? And I want you to be bold and put it in the chat. One word. What is a strength of yours? Or one or a few words. We have to remember that when the jerks get us down, we are going to pivot to thinking that our feedback is true. We are going to pivot to obsessing over our weakness. And I want to remind you, you must obsess over your strengths. And just to celebrate some of these strengths: creativity, efficiency, networking, determination, written communication, attention to detail, seeing the big picture, relationship building, thinking again, problem solving, remembering birthdays. Oh my God, Tracy, that is so underappreciated in making people feel loved. Detail orientation, cooking and entertaining, empathy, positivity, communication, sensitivity, organization, creating calm out of chaos, tenacity, problem solving, leadership, being a connector. These truly are your strengths. And like Taylor, when the jerks get you down, I want you to double down and obsess on your strengths, not just on your weaknesses. Any questions about this before we move on to number 3? And we got in the chat what feels like more of a comment, but I'll throw it out there. So Mara wrote, she's like, all these tips are professional, but I feel like they really apply even to being personal. Looking for, she's using the shorthand for a partner. Sarah and Suzanne love these lessons. Okay, so let's move on to Taylor Swift leadership lesson number 3. Obsessed. Your ideas are your brand currency. And I'm curious, like when we think about Taylor Swift modeling this idea that your ideas are your brand currency, what do you guys see as the iconic moment here? For me, it is, well, everyone says re-recording the music. We are going to get to re-recording the music. I promise. I think that is the greatest flex of all time. Um, iconic moment here was this idea of, you know, her point of view about her songwriting being her secret weapon. And there's this great quote that she has in the documentary Miss Americana, which is, she says, I know that without me writing my own songs, I wouldn't be here. Everybody in music has their own niche, specialty thing that sets them apart from everybody else. And my storytelling is what it is for me. I really think that we can all agree that what we love about Taylor's music are the lyrics, are the storytelling. And I think this is actually one of the most easily translatable things. So, like, are we going to write hundreds and hundreds of songs in our lives? I probably won't. That's just not my talent. However, I think that there are so many important tools that we can learn to share our own ideas as our brand currency. And the first one is really so simple. I want you to get more comfortable sharing your ideas. Like really, really showing up. Your brand is your currency. I want you to think about how you show up on LinkedIn. Are you posting content about the things that you're interested in? Are you posting ideas, right? Like really understanding that sharing your ideas is, as someone put in the chat, Michelle put in the chat, is your superpower. Your ideas are your brand currency, just like Taylor. And you have to show up consistently. Taylor has recorded, I saw the number, over 240 songs. Those are just the songs that have been recorded. I am sure she has written dozens and dozens, if not hundreds more. And we have to remember that showing up constantly is truly iterative. You're not always going to get it right. Like not every LinkedIn post is going to be the most profound thing you've ever said. Not every share or idea in the meeting is going to be the most profound thing you have ever shared. But the idea is to keep showing up because your ideas are what you are known for. And I really want you to feel empowered to own your message with confidence. So one of the things that I talk about in my book is I talk about 16 things that I forbid you to say at work. And so it's not just important to share your ideas, to show up constantly, to know your brand is iterative, but it's really important not just what you say, but also what you don't say. So I just want to share this list with you, right? These are 16 things I forbid you to say. And I'm curious, I'd love you to throw a number in the chat if you find yourself an offender of one of these. So here are like just 8 things I forbid you to share when it's your own idea. So, you know, in a meeting, like you've probably already thought of this, maybe I'm missing something, this might be a dumb idea, you know more than I do, have we thought about, and then pitching the idea that someone else then takes credit for. I'm no expert, but using we instead of I, and oh, you know, you all have been working on this longer than I have. And I see the chat exploding. People are like, I'm a 2, I'm a 5, I'm a 6, I'm all of them. I'm guilty of all of these. Well, buckle up because this is only half the list. Here's a list of crutch words I want you to stop saying. Like, stop saying just, stop saying actually, stop saying maybe, stop saying I wanted to, stop saying sorry. When you're receiving praise, stop saying it was nothing. Stop saying that you're just happy to help. And when you, this is so important, I am dying for you to not email back, sorry for the delay. We live in a world as women where other people weaponize our apologies. I'm going to say that one more time. We live in a world where other people weaponize our apologies. It's not cool. And Laura says, instead of sorry, writing thanks for your patience. Laura, that's a tool that I throw out there in my book. And sometimes like you just don't need to apologize. Like it is a normal thing. There's a great Adam Grant quote that your email is not my emergency, right? So just because it's urgent to you doesn't mean that it's urgent to me. I really want to encourage you to think, when we think about your ideas as your currency, it's not just enough to show up. It is enough. It's important to think about how we deliver our message, because the truth is people pick up what we put down. And what they're unapologetic, people are not going to respect your ideas. People are not going to respect your boundaries. So can we all commit, throw me a +1 in the chat, can we please all commit to removing some of these words from our vocabulary? And just so you know, if you want to download this list, you can go to somethingmajorcoaching.com/book, and there's all these printout materials that you can download from the book. You don't have to read the book, you don't have to buy the book, but you can download this list, and you can, it's like in my packet of resources, and you can literally print it out and put it in your workspace. I love this. Deborah says she stopped using sorry at the beginning of the year. I really don't believe in eliminating sorry. It's just like, we have to say sorry for when we're actually sorry. Like, did you hurt someone? Did you truly burden someone? Did you embarrass somebody? That's when your apology matters. Oh my God, you guys are so sweet. Everyone's typing the book in the chat. Thank you. It just came out in paperback. I'm very excited. Okay. Iconic Taylor lesson number 4. Know your value and be willing to fight for it. I present to you the re-releasing of her catalog. So thank you all who have been typing this in the chat. For me, like when I think about this lesson from Taylor Swift of knowing your value and fighting for it, this is something that I think she modeled with a level of tenacity that every single one of us could benefit from. And Kelly just said, can you remind me of the title of lesson number 3? It was Know Your Ideas, Your Brand Currency, Kelly. So when it comes to lesson number 4, knowing your value and fighting for it, for me, that iconic moment was the re-releasing of her catalog. Someone in the chat, Suzanne, said, suck it, Scooter Braun. So for those of you who are not familiar with the saga of all of this, essentially what happened was Scooter Braun, who represents Kanye, who represents Bieber, who represents all these artists that basically publicly dunked on Taylor Swift for years and years and years in the public arena, acquired the rights to her catalog. He owned the masters. And apparently it was Kelly Clarkson who gave her the idea that she should re-record the catalog so that she would own the masters on and all the rights on the Taylor's version. So I just think that one of the things that we need to give Taylor Swift credit for, in addition to knowing your value and fighting for it, is like, even in the way that she stands for it in that iconic moment of re-releasing her catalog, like, she's such a disruptor. This was literally never done in the music industry, to put so much power in the artist's hands. And I want us to think about like how we can know our value and fight for it. And one of the biggest things that I think about, or I talk to my clients about as a coach, is like, oftentimes it's like just knowing your value in terms of your financial value. So I should say that like your financial value doesn't define you. On the flip side, we also know that women are paid 83 cents on the dollar in corporate America as compared to men. We know that women entrepreneurs are paid 78 cents on the dollar compared to our male counterparts. We only get 2% of the venture capital funding. And we know that working moms often make only 67 cents on the dollar as compared to working dads. I should note that those are what we call blended aggregated averages. We know that those gaps just increase so widely for women of color and women from other marginalized communities and identities. And so it's really important when we know our value, that we're ready to fight for it, that we can understand the difference between a right sizing and a raise. What's the difference between a right sizing and a raise? And this is something that's so important to me, because a lot of times it's like, you find out, maybe you're like me, and you find out through a straight email that a male colleague who's underperforming you at work just got a $10,000 raise. And you're like, what? But I overperformed him. And so instead of going to my boss that day and asking for a raise, I asked for a right sizing. And here's what I think about the difference. A raise is a merit-based increase as compensation or as a reward for absolutely positively excellent performance. My hunch is that you all deserve raises. I won't dispute that. Importantly, a right sizing is when we have the organization rescope our compensation to properly align with our current responsibilities and or organizational benchmarks. So how many of you have like taken on the duties of a colleague who like went out, the position never got backfilled, or the backfill like came in but never actually took the responsibilities back, and you're still doing 20%, 30%, 70% of somebody else? How many of you ever found out that the market was paying more? How many of you ever found out that a male colleague was being paid more than you are? I know I see a lot of hand raises in the chat. It's really important to have the vocabulary to go into leadership if we want to live that Taylor Swift lesson of knowing our value and standing for it, and feeling empowered to say, hey, I want to have a conversation with you about right sizing my compensation. In my experience, when we talk about right sizing, the burden is actually on the organization, not on us. So yes, you have to always like have your facts, have your stories, have your numbers. But really, really making sure that we understand what we're asking for. Now, sometimes you're entitled to a right sizing and a raise. And you know what I say? Go for it. Ask for both if you feel like you need it. Let's just check in with the chat. Okay, people are really loving this concept of right sizing versus raises. If you have any questions about this or anything else, please put that in the chat. Someone asked where we can get the resources on the words not to say at work. I will pop that into the resources that follow up from here. Can I go back just what for 2 seconds, Alyssa? That's your question. Oh, the slide on right sizing versus raise. Yes, this is your moment. Thank you. I know sometimes people like take a picture of a slide. This is your moment to take this picture of the slide. And Laura says, this is why I absolutely believe in the job description. Always get a written list of your duties. And when they ask you to deviate, see what compensation is available. Completely agree. And I know that there are some women on this call who are also self-employed entrepreneurs. That also goes for writing a good statement of work, ladies. All right, Alyssa, thanks for speaking up. I love that you owned your message and spoke up for what you needed. Let's all like give a list of some love, because we often don't say what it is that we need. Back to lesson number 4, knowing your value and fighting for it. I really want to encourage you to pursue environments and people that see your value. So maybe you've gone for the right sizing at work, you've gone for the promotion, you've been declining for external hires. Like, you know what? Like, again, feedback about them, not about you. Like, maybe it's just not a good fit anymore. So instead of like making this existential about you and your value, take the energy you would usually use to dump on yourself and really seek out the people and the environments that see your value. For me, I think this extends to our personal relationships and our friendships, right? Like, time is very precious. Like, really spend your time with the people who see your value and have your back, and make sure you're investing back into those environments as well. And then again, I'm just going to say this again, like one more time, as Nathan Lind would say, one more time for the cheap seats in the back. Be vocal about sharing your ideas. Like, nothing communicates that you know your value rather than being empowered to speak your mind, to share your ideas. If you really want to demonstrate your value, again, remember we talked about in lesson 1, those small moves, those small yeses and those small nos. Speaking up in the meeting is showing your value. Speaking up on an idea, flagging a problem and proposing a solution, these are all ways to demonstrate your value. And I'm just checking in with the team. With the chat, someone says, like, these are really great things to encourage for teams. You all are so vocal in the chat. I love this. And someone wrote, you know, like, that's how I came to where I'm working today. Like, I have a team now that sees my value, and my last employer did it. I love that. Like, go get up. I always tell my clients, I think they're not happy at work. Like, okay, like, if they're not seeing your value, right? It's not quiet quitting. It's just right sizing your contribution to what you're being compensated for, right? Right sizing is a two-way street. And then take the extra hour that you would use to doing after hours work and use it to have a networking meeting. Use it to polish off your resume. Use it to have a coffee with somebody. Also remember that, like, research from the field of psychology shows us that in moments of crisis of confidence, so those moments where we're feeling really down and out about ourselves, sharing our knowledge with somebody else has a proven effect to increase our confidence. So remember that mentoring, remember that sharing your knowledge, sharing your information, sharing the information and lived experiences that you have, you're not just helping somebody else who could be a mentee or who's just a friend in need, but the research shows that it also helps remind us of our own value. And finally, our fifth lesson, to me, this is such an iconic Taylor Swift lesson, is knowing that your relationships are everything. Does anyone feel like they have an iconic moment from Taylor that really like exemplifies how relationships are everything? Just curious. For me, the iconic moment was bringing Beyonce to the Eras premiere. Law says her deadpan at the Golden Globes. For me, like this is just like, does anyone remember the moment that this broke the internet? In terms of Taylor Swift and bringing Beyonce to the Eras premiere. And so when we talk about that fifth lesson, knowing that your relationships are everything, I know that every single one of us has a Beyonce in our life. But I also know that every single one of us has lots of other relationships that are really important. And I want to encourage you to practice this idea of shine theory. As women, we have been taught that if we need to be successful, oftentimes we need to compete against each other. That is a lie that the patriarchy invented to keep us down. And I love this idea of shine theory from Aminat Tussaud and Anne Friedman. And it's this simple idea: if you don't shine, I don't shine if you don't shine. And the idea of shine theory is that women go farther when we collaborate and support each other instead of competing with each other. As you think about, okay, how am I going to practice shine theory? How am I going to live this lesson of, knowing that my relationships are everything? I want to encourage you to be an amplifier. And again, this is another story that I tell in my book. This is one of my favorite stories. I live in Washington, D.C. This is like one of my favorite political stories of all time. So there's this great story about President Obama and the fact that his inner circle of senior advisors had more women in it than any administration before. But what a lot of the women realized was like they were still kind of being railroaded by the men in the room who were speaking over them or taking credit for their ideas. And so they got together and they practiced in practicing shine theory, right? If you don't shine, I don't shine. They practiced this idea of what they called amplification. And so they got together and they said, we're going to amplify each other's ideas in these meetings. And so it's like how it would work is, Alyssa, she said, Randi, you're my Beyonce. So Alyssa, I'll use you as an example. So if Alyssa were to speak up in the meeting, I would make a point to amplify Alyssa's idea. I love the point that Alyssa has made. Another way to amplify other women around you, especially at work, is to say, hey, building on what Alyssa said. Again, we're literally amplifying. We're repeating the connection between the idea giver and the idea giver's identity. We're building off of that. And so I encourage you to think about, just like these women practice amplification in the Oval Office, I want you to practice amplification in your life. Like, where can you amplify other women in the workplace? Whether it is just by shouting them out on LinkedIn to give their content more reach, or shouting out their idea at work to make sure that their ideas are getting credit for it, or shouting them out in like your text messages, just back and forth on the group text to say, Alyssa's too shy to share that she just got this big promotion at work, and I want us all to celebrate with her. So I really want you to think about, where can you be an amplifier? And in fact, I would love for you to shout out an accomplishment of a woman in your life who inspires you. So feel free to throw that in the chat, whether she's in the webinar or not. Who is somebody in your life that you want to amplify? And we'll come back to those in a second. The other thing we want to do is we really want to be able to build and lean on this idea of this personal board of advisors. So one of the things that Taylor Swift, I think, has modeled beautifully over the years is really putting together this core group of supporters, from a longtime publicist to longtime friends who really have her back. And the same goes for us. We must build and lean on our own personal board of advisors. I know for me, the peer relationships that I have are just as important as the formal mentorships that I have. So research from Harvard Business School shows that women are more likely, women are better networkers and relationship builders and cultivators, but we're more likely to see networking and relationship interaction as an extracurricular than we are as a core job requirement. So I want you to think about, like, where are you shortchanging this time with your personal board of advisors because it feels like you don't have time? when actually, like, this is one of the most important things we can do. And I love that people are shouting out women who aren't even here. Michelle Ackerman, my friend who celebrated 17 years in business. Mara Petrovsky, who's on this call, I believe, as a role model. Check out Mary Bowden's career. So I love that we're just celebrating those things. Again, I want you to like really think about investing in networking and relationship building. You think you don't have time to do this? Hear me when I say this, you're wrong. You think you don't have time to do this? You are wrong. Investing in your networking and relationship building is one of the most important things you can do to continuously develop and advance in your career. Find a way to do it that you enjoy. Find a way to go to topics for events that speak to you. I really encourage you to remember, like, these conversations are how women get ahead. It's how our goals are contact sport. And then finally, I think it's just so important. I really don't want you to shortchange quality time with your loved ones. I think as high performers, especially as women, we give so much to other people and we forget that we have to have something left over for ourselves and for that innermost circle. I don't know, throw me a +1 if anyone here is a fan of Esther Perel or knows who she is. She's a really famous like relationship psychologist and expert. She wrote a viral book a few years ago called Mating in Captivity, which is great reading for anyone in a long-term monogamous relationship. And Sarah said, who's the person? It's Esther Perel. She's a really famous relationship expert and clinical psychologist. And one of the things that I heard Esther say on a workshop that I got to attend with her a few years ago was, you know, what version of you are you bringing home at the end of the day? Like, are you bringing the version of yourself to your partner and to your friends that you bring to your clients or that you bring to others at work? And that really stuck with me. I think that we need to remember, as we really model that lesson from Taylor, that relationships are everything, that we need to bring that version that we give to everyone else to the relationships that matter most to us. So that was our 5th lesson, knowing your relationships are everything. We're going to have time in just a second to take any last minute questions. So if you have them, feel free to pop them into the chat. And I just want to go through what we covered today. So we talked about 5 leadership lessons all women can learn from Taylor, and we're going to recap them in a second. We talked about the iconic moments demonstrating these lessons and actions and practical tools to take them into our non-celebrity work lives. And so just as a recap, these were our lessons. Number 1, pursue your dreams relentlessly. Number 2, do not let the jerks get you down. Number 3, your ideas are your brand currency. Number 4, know your value and fight for it. And number 5, know your relationships are everything. To answer Emily's question, yes, the recording is going to be available. And I'd love to hear from you before we close out. We still have a few more minutes for questions. What is one thing you're walking away committed to doing today? What is one thing? So we talked about feedback, we talked about relationships, we talked about goal setting. I want to hear from you. Again, just like we talked about in that goals up front. If you put it in this chat, it is more likely to happen. What is one thing that you are going to do? And I'm going to come back to those in a second. I do want to invite you all to stay in touch with me. So if we're going to do more workshops, those are going to be announced. As many of you know, I love to do free virtual workshops. I mean, we have people on this call from Orlando to Egypt. Can you beat that? For those of you who are going to be in DC, we have our in-person power lunch on March 1st at RPM. Please join us if you're in town. The second thing I want to let you know, if you're interested, is we have 3 new group coaching programs kicking off. I see we have alarms of some of our programs on the chat with us right now. We have one that's going to be for working moms who are returning from maternity leave, one for women who are in career transition, and one for women who want to go deeper on the tools in this book. We talked about a ton of them today. So those are details for all of those are going to be released. If you're interested in learning more about that, let me know. And then I encourage you to just stay connected with me about coaching, about speaking on social media. If you want to learn more about coaching, if you want to learn about bringing me to your company for Women's History Month, please let me know. I also want to remind you the book is now out on paperback, so feel free to pick up a copy of that either on Amazon or at your local bookstore. The DC Public Library is accessioning it this week, so feel free to put in a request at your public library to borrow it. And I really want to encourage you to just stay connected with me on social media. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on Instagram. I really, really love hearing from you and how it works and how all these tools are working for you. And before we close out, I just want to read some of the incredible commitments that the women in this room have said. We're not going to let the jerks get us down. We are going to know our value, be mindful of showing my best self at home, sharing my ideas more, literally living my goals as a marathon, staying consistent in my LinkedIn posting, sharing my own ideas, knowing that just because it's urgent to you doesn't mean it's urgent to me, executing on my goals, not letting the jerks get me down, being more in control of my self-doubt, not letting toxic people ruin my dreams. I'm so inspired knowing what you are inspired from. I really encourage you to please keep in touch with me. When I say it, I mean it. I love getting your DMs. I love getting your emails. I love working with you. I love seeing you at my virtual events. I just love the buzz I'm even seeing in the chat right now. People are saying this is one of the best workshops they've ever been to, the recording. So I want to thank you all so much again for coming. Again, I'm Randi Braun. You can learn more about me and my work at somethingmajorcoaching.com. Drop me a hello on social media if you want to compare Taylor Swift playlists. And please keep in touch with me. I cannot wait to hear how you made 2024 your year for swiftly achieving your goals. Bye, everybody.